COVID has disrupted the lives of many children, their parents and teachers. Schools have either closed or in the process of closing for the year. So we've decided to look back on lessons learned and look forward, I guess, to how we can cope with the challenges ahead. To help us do that, let me bring in clinical sociologist, Professor Mariam Seedat-Khan. She joins us now live via Zoom. Professor, always a pleasure having you on the program. Welcome.
Thank you, Blaine. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Look, thank you very much indeed for taking the opportunity. This pandemic has created the largest disruption of the education system in the recent history. The UN tells us that nearly 1.6 billion learners in more than 190 countries and all continents have been affected. You are the founder of SMART, which stands for Simply Managing Academic-Related Tasks. How do you think South African learners are coping?
Well, it's been a traumatic time for South African learners, and we're talking about kids from the age of 3 years old all the way to postdoctoral scholars and PhD students at university. And the impact has had widespread ramifications, not only for the students, but for the academics and for the teachers. And while the vaccines seem imminent, I think we are a distance away from being vaccinated in South Africa. And I suspect going into the 2021 academic year, we're going to see a similar setup where we are going to be forced into online learning, online assessments, online lectures, as opposed to face-to-face.
Right.
The greatest challenges here have been for exit-level students, whether it's in exiting prep school, junior prep, senior prep, high school, or a university degree. So those have been the real challenges per se.
I just want to talk more about the early childhood development as well. You know, when children are at home and not at school, there are risks. They may be vulnerable to abuse. They aren't benefiting from social stimulation. They may not get the nutrition that they normally get to school. A continuum of care from preconception through to the formative early years is so important, you would agree. COVID complicates that. To what extent has this virus affected early childhood development?
So I think it's affected early childhood development significantly, but it's also affected people like you and I, Blaine.
Yeah.
Because as humans, we are social beings. We go through different stages of socialization, primary socialization, secondary socialization, re-socialization. And as a result of that, we learn different social skills. We develop our we develop our confidence. Yeah. I don't want to go into too much of detail, but our needs, Maslow's theory of hierarchy,
right.
And the id and the ego, and so on and so forth. All of these start development into uterine, and then they begin in those early childhood days. So the fact that these young children are extracted from this social setting where they learn to interact with each other, a simple thing like learning to share, learning to communicate, learning the rules that govern our society, which is so important, and reinforcing behavior through imitation and copying. All of those things are now absent. And you raise an important concept around the socioeconomic access, which is, in South Africa, we know there's a huge gap between the two. And so, yes, a large portion of our population depend on the schooling system for access to nutritious meals. Yeah. And all of this is being compromised. And it has the long-term implications,
right.
Not only for the kids, but for the parents as well.
I worry about that, more for my child who's 9 than me. And I wonder, if this is going to have any long-term effects. I mean, physical development, social, emotional, cognitive and motor development, so important to get right. But Prof, there seems to be a growing pandemic fatigue. From reporting I've seen in many countries, other countries, there's a fatigue of forbearance, self-control, restraint, and I guess one would say tolerance. Where's your level of concern regarding the fatigue of fear heading into the 2021 academic year?
So, yes, I'm experiencing that as well, lockdown fatigue. And but I think we have to rationalize it and be very clinical, because the impact of disregarding or giving in to this fatigue is problematic, because it's going to take us right back to where we started. If we look at the statistics that are coming out of South Africa, we're seeing some of the highest rates. And this is as a result of social gatherings that have occurred at the end of the matric academic year. We saw rage that has impacted largely. We saw Black Friday, and despite the rules and the regulations, we saw people going out, and there is almost like a relaxation with the exhaustion. The absence of masks, the absence of social distancing, and we have lost we've lost people.
Yeah.
Every human life is a significant loss. Yeah. But we're finding more and more we're losing teachers, we're losing academics, and I think we have to just follow the rules. Yeah. As difficult as this may be, there are repercussions. As human beings, we behave and we act in certain ways. Mm-hmm. So we don't go out and steal generally, because there are implications of imprisonment. So we follow the social norms, but there's a sense of anomie in our society right now. There's a sense of normlessness. If you look around with everything that's going on in terms of how the COVID-19 infection rate is proliferating, the leakage of the matric maths and physical science paper. If you look at all of those, it's because there's a sense of normlessness. So you have a 9-year-old son, and we all do things or do not prevent ourselves from doing things because there are consequences. Yeah. So when there are no consequences, so if you perhaps have a social gathering with 500 people in your home, there are legal repercussions for that. And as long as we don't see those repercussions being enacted, we're going to continue to have this problem growing, and it's going to be with us longer than it actually needs to be.
Part of the job of a clinical sociologist is to develop and apply techniques that seek to improve the quality of people's lives. What have you picked up in terms of learners adapting to this new normal, as you were talking about some of the challenges? These efforts to expand digital learning, has it been pivotal in South Africa's COVID-19 response, but also well beyond it?
So, yes, in terms of the responses, I think technology has been critical, but we also cannot ignore the digital divide that exists in our country. Yeah. While some families have access to fiber 24/7 and have backup systems with solar energy to support Wi-Fi for tests, examinations, and lectures, there are other families that are dependent on a limited number of or limited access to data, or others still who are in areas where there is no access to data. So I think the challenge here has been greatest on parents in particular. And I want to be bold and say it is women largely that have borne the brunt. So when we speak of young children under the age of 12, we have women who are operating from home, and they have to ensure that their children get some vitamin D. They have to monitor and supervise homework. So what was already a double shift for women in a society that has not yet realized gender equity, has now exacerbated the role for women. So women have now become teachers. Their work has penetrated the space of the home. There is no separation between home and work, and there's no separation between family and work. And as a result, we're seeing an increasing number of mental health challenges emerging among women. We also see a shrinkage in terms of career development, growth, and advancement for women in particular in different sectors.
Yeah. Let's follow up on that, but shift gears a bit. I want to talk about your latest achievement. According to your bio, you are one of only 40 international certified clinical sociologists in the world and one of 3 in South Africa. And you recently been appointed a professor at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. So congratulations on that. But talk to us about the road getting to where you are now, and especially some of the challenges women face globally to rise to the rank of being a professor.
Thank you, Blaine. So it's a tough journey. So, I mean, one of the prerequisites of becoming a professor is a PhD. And I obtained my PhD at the end of 2006. So that's 14 years ago, almost to the date. So, becoming a professor is not something you decide, okay, I'm getting up today, I'm going to, it's your life's work. And it's particularly challenging for women and Black women per se. If you look at the global statistics, irrespective of the country that you're looking at, whether it's the United States or South Africa, Asia, Latin America, there are a lower number of female professors than there are male professors. And there are even lower number of Black or minority group professors at all of these institutions. And this is, academia or academic institutions and universities are rooted in a very patriarchal kind of systemic structure with prevailing old boys networks and that form part of the system. So while it might have taken me 14 years to get to the position, it's very likely that it will take my male contemporary possibly 10 years or half the time that it took me. If we look at the impact that COVID-19 has had on academics, we see that there has been a significant shrinkage of the number of women that have published books, journal articles, participation in international conferences. Yet, at the same time, we've seen an escalation or we've seen a growth in the number of male academics in terms of their scholarly outputs. So the system and our society is structured in such a way that at the outset, women start the race with a disadvantage. And once they're in the race, it's almost like an obstacle course. You're jumping over all of these obstacles and you never know which obstacles are going to be thrown in front of you. So, it's really hard work. But I think we're making good progress, and I'm hoping that there are going to be lots of other women that follow suit. And one of my ambitions is to support my colleagues and other women to achieve these kinds of academic accolades.
Professor Mariam Seedat-Khan, we thank you very much indeed for your time and your insight. Congratulations once again. Good health to you and your family. Be well.
Thank you, Blaine. Thank you.